Church just puts me in a place that I just did not want to go into.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, like I can't do it. Not today.
Yeah, I feel good. Who are you?
Huh?
Who are you?
What do you mean? Who am I?
Who are you?
I would guess that I'm a continuing spirit in the flesh in this matrix and resonate with Hathor Segment L.
So, the title of this series is Switching Stories, or the podcast is Switching Stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go through your story and just the switches as it relates to spirituality, religion, self-awareness, however you may define it, but we'll get to it.
No, goodness, this sounds like fun. I'm glad I smoked a little bit of weed.
Fun.
So I smoked a little bit of weed before I came out here.
So much fun.
Oh, so, there it is.
Where did it begin as far as your childhood? What was your faith like when you were younger?
I was asked this before on, and it brought up my grandmother. My grandmother was more religious than my parents. So when my parents left to Chicago, for my father having an opportunity, he was real young. They were in their 20s. So my grandmother came and took over raising us for about almost close to a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, give or take. And she would always take us to the Baptist church. She made us understand that God, you feared God, and that was the way you respected and loved him. I always kind of had that fear in me from her. And just going to the Baptist church, she was a children's minister. She was a woman's minister. She was very tied into the church. And my family, the Bellamy's, were very much in the Baptist church, and my mother was raised in it, but she kind of did her own thing. But I would say my grandmother was the root on my mother's side.
So what was your relationship like with church? Did you have a denomination or?
Christian, being a Christian Baptist, was raised Baptist, being a Christian by my grandmother, but not my parents. They didn't have any like denomination or anything put on us. So as I grew up, I still took to the Christian base.
So was this grandma on your mom's side or your dad's side?
Mom's side. Mm-hmm.
So does your mom have that same structure? You said they didn't raise you with any denomination, but did she have that same structure that your grandmother provided?
Yeah, both sides. My mother and my father both were, I think my father's side was Pentecostal. But
I never really looked into like the different types of churches.
And don't get me started, some type of, branch or whatever. I'm not for sure. I ain't gonna lie. Somebody may be watching and be like, that ain't right. So I stay in my lane. Don't really know, but it was, I believe, Pentecostal on my father's side. And he was, taken to Sunday school, and they grew up in a small town in Kokomo, Indiana. So that was how the black family stayed together, was those community-based type of churches that everybody went to, depending on the neighborhood or just the lineage of how they grew up.
What did you believe in when you were younger? What was your belief?
I believe in Christianity, that God, there was one God, Jesus Christ, all the biblical stories, and definitely believed in, that God is a righteous and he's fearful, and you should respect that and respect order and law, the commandments, being righteous, being good. That was definitely put on us by my grandmother a great deal, to live right, don't do wicked acts and all that.
So when you were a child, what did you perceive as good and evil? Like, how would you try to describe like how you try to walk? Did you try to abide by laws in the Bible, or did you have a perception in your head of like how to operate as good versus?
Well, I know that there was the laws that were presented to me in Bible study school when I was a child. I knew there was different laws, and that there was good and evil, and there was Satan and angels and God and Mary and all of that. So I perceived it as just be good, be a good person, tell the truth, don't lie, don't steal, those little things. The moral conduct. I really see religion as a structure, and a way to conduct your morale. And that's what I would basically receive, was try to be the best person towards other people and treat people how you would want to be treated yourself. And that's how my grandmother raised us.
So when do you think you transition from religion by your grandmother or religion taught to you by your grandmother to something else?
Yeah.
Was there a shift that happened when you were in middle school or high school?
It was eighth grade. I was dating a Jehovah's Witness. His name was, I can't go on to that, but can I say his first name? Was that okay?
It's up to you.
I mean, he's a catalyst to all of this, really. His name was Damien. And Damien was who I lost my virginity to and all of that. So he had heavy influence over me. And he was a Jehovah's Witness. At first, I did not know. But as he started, I guess, doing bad stuff and I guess feeling bad that he took my virginity, he went on to go back to his understanding of being a Jehovah's Witness. He started telling me that all that stuff, like the Baptist playing organs and all of that, evokes demons. And he was just opening my eyes to a lot of things that I never heard about with Christianity. And I started looking at the Bible deeper and opening it up, and not just for Bible study, but looking at it. And I asked my mother. My mother got really mad when I started asking her questions like, are we evil? Da 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 da. When people catch the Holy Ghost, is that evil? And I was really concerned because I wanted to be doing the right thing. So I started asking questions, and she said, you go in there and read the Bible yourself. So I said, I don't get it. I don't get everything. And I just kept reading. And then I started writing letters. Like The Color Purple, I started writing letters to God and saying, dear God. And it was like, instead of a journal entry, it was like letters to God, just writing, I want the truth. I want the truth. I want to know the truth. Is Christianity right? Is Jehovah's Witness right? Tell me what's the truth. So Damien definitely pushed that because he told me something contrary to what I knew.
What was that initial conversation like where he was introducing you to Jehovah's Witness, or is it something that you went forward with because you had like a love for him, or can you kind of describe like your feelings and why did you kind of lean on to what he said, or what was the introduction that led you to latch on to what he was talking about?
Because he told me something different, and I'm always open to something different. My mind is always wanting to learn. I deal in the month of 11. I'm a Scorpio, so I like that unknown. It was intriguing to me and was like, what? This isn't right. So I wanted to know. Like, I'm a person, if you tell me something, I want to be open to understanding your view and your perspective and comparing it to mine and then doing my own research. So
anything that was something that you didn't grab onto from Jehovah's Witness?
Well, I didn't fully grab onto it. I just wanted to ask my mother to see if her what she was saying made more sense than what he was saying. And I did notice that sometimes when people caught the Holy Ghost, it kind of scared me. And I did feel like the organs and when the music would play, it really would touch my spirit and have me in a certain emotion only when I was at church. So those were things where I was always observing as a young child on up. And then I guess I'm kind of going into that I was on both sides of my family, there's spiritual abilities. So I was always open to the unknown, what is mysterious, what is different. And like I would compare those things.
That reminds me of where I want to be here with like this starting this off for you. I know this is with, and especially because you mentioned the dear God and the general entry. That was something that stands out to me because I love my favorite movies growing up. But I didn't even really think about, or in books. But I didn't think about how, I wanted to format this experience of switching stories in the book of, like right now, we're the book of Thor, second L.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And I think about how, what's been my journey as far as like connecting back to just the Bible and God and what that means to me just because of my experiences, related. We were in the same situation. So that thing of research, like that's where I want to share with everyone here is researching just the different perspective of why left a certain religion to go to another one, or why did someone come back to another religion. Like that's been something that's been very like interesting to me. When I got back into the Bible, which the Bible has changed to me in so many different ways, and I always stuck to the King James version, but it's like I have a new, I guess, way in just what I read a scripture today talking about, being way from one doctrine to the other. And I'm not sure if it exactly feels that way, but it does feel like I just get strengthened and get back to a root of, what was important to me. And I love the Bible. It's like a good book. And all the psychology, and all of the something books. I'm like, a lot of this is already in here, But I'm just glad that you said that, because it just reminded me of like this whole experience, and I just know that it's important for me to start this off with you, because I had such a great relationship with you when I had one of the most interesting experiences in the Bible, and we've both been through different journeys together. Some of it I've learned from you, some of it I've learned from other people and self research, some from other people who have left that same situation.
Right.
And then I feel like I've ended up switching my story back to the beginning, think that I don't want to present these stories in this format that I have here as like my way is the way. Always interested in everyone's story and why they switch, because that's all the Bible is. It's a whole bunch of different testimonies and
books,
yeah,
chapters, and yeah, I feel like I've gone back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I don't think that Christianity was my start. My start was purely having spiritual abilities and believing in that when I was a little girl, and seeing those things that are in the other realm, and knowing they were communicating with me and dealing with me, and that took a hard road to get back to. But was always present, was always there, sometimes stronger than other times. But I definitely feel like transitioning to the Israelite church, that took away a great deal of my spiritual belief, and it got me in trouble.
Why do you say that? Why did it take away a good deal of your spiritual belief?
Because it's almost like I let go of my identity for that perfection with the Israelites.
Right.
And that part of you of tapping in spiritually is a place that you have to go in deep. And sometimes even it requires being alone and meditation, or, some of the things that I was kind of doing just naturally as a little girl and picking up on. It was hard to get that, because it was like I had a different type of master. I wasn't mastering myself. I was mastering what was told to me. And I had said that in another interview with Vice News, that I felt like we weren't allowed to truly be ourselves. So it was like always wearing a mask with everybody and say, hey sis, and Shabbat Shalom, and And it was just like, I didn't want to. I don't want to fake where everybody was saying that they were well. I remember one time you used to do that with me, and I would just be like, I'm not good, and people would just be looking like, like that's not the answer. Like you gotta say you're good. It was just like you couldn't say that. I'm not feeling this, and I don't want to hear sis today, or it was just like a fakeness that was going on. That I don't know. Maybe as a Scorpio, it just was not gelling with me in my spirit, and I have to be real. And I couldn't tap into angels showing me stuff. I couldn't all the way tap into my abilities of seeing, because you got to be open vessel to that. And sometimes I would tell them leave me alone. Like when I would start seeing them in the church, or they popping up, in around people and stuff, I just started saying leave me alone, because I felt like it was almost in a sense wicked for a moment.
When you say they were popping up, can you describe what that means or what that experience is like? What do you mean popping up?
I see orbs, and then I see ghosts. I see different figures. So sometimes they would be like lights. They could look like different colored lights. So it could be like a bright light. It could be white. It could be purple, blue. They communicate through colors, and they would be sometimes on people's faces or around their head, or you would see shadows walking around. In the church, outside the church, is just something that I got accustomed to doing and seeing since I was little. It's stuff that's not in this realm.
What was the first time? When was the first time you saw it, and how did you?
I shared this with Baltimore Paranormal. My first ghost I've seen was when I was hitting puberty, and it was a little boy. He was a baby. He was dressed in all white, kind of looked like toddler form. He had on a white little outfit, white hat, and I woke up around witching hour, where usually spirits are in heavy communication. Like it was around like 3 or so, and he was in front of my closet, but his head was like just underneath the doorknob, so he was fairly small, and he looked like my niece. And I said, that's weird. And I was just like, who is this little boy? And in the morning, I woke up and I told my mother what happened. My mother was like, started crying and calling my sister, was like, come upstairs, come upstairs. And Kid came upstairs, my older sister, and she told me she had an abortion after I told her what happened and what I seen. She had an abortion. It was a little boy. So that was my first time like, oh shit, this is real. Like when my sister started busting out crying, I'm like, this is real. My mother was always on her side of the family. All my sisters had those abilities, and my father has it on his side. So it was just by nature to have it and understand it. And if you don't nurture those things, they go away. And mine started to go away, more so when I started telling them to leave me alone, and I didn't want communication.
Have you started nurturing it later on in life?
Of course. I use it now.
Well, we're in an interview, sis.
Well, of course I use it now, because that's my I'm a spiritual practitioner, so I have to use it and strengthen it. And now that was kind of like the segue of coming out of the Israelite church, was going into metaphysics, receiving different teachers that were, in that field, and develop my abilities. Even after my relationship with the man that taught me a great deal of practices to understand people better spiritually, I had to still tune into my own intuition, my own abilities, and hone those things. And I'm still evolving into that now.
What do you mean by nurture? Like, how did you nurture? What is that experience like, or what is the process for nurturing those abilities back on your?
This meditation is an opener. when you're doing clear audience, that's another ability that I have, is strengthen those things by doing like sound meditation, um, praying more, going out in nature, grounding myself, truly trusting yourself. It's a lot of inner work. And even after leaving the church, I went through a great journey for 5 years of being homeless and seeing many sides of myself, many aspects of myself, living with other women and their children. That really opened me up, understanding not to fear losing my home. That was a struggle after I left the church because I went through a lot financially. But my journey, my spiritual journey, helped me to understand that, you let all those things go, you get back so much more than holding on so many, holding on to material things in life. So I went on a major journey and transformation after leaving the church, and it was very hard to get back to self, but it was a process, a deep process, a soul wrenching process to get back to who I was, and be better than I was as a child.
Do you trust yourself now?
Oh, absolutely. I think when I went to a shaman, I would never forget the shaman who did me and the father of my child at the time. He did a reading and he was so confident and sure of himself. And I took that with me. And he was like, nobody will believe you if you don't believe in yourself. So when I do my readings, I'm taking that sureness and that confidence, because the spirits can't work with you if you're not confident and you're not open. They know it, they feel it. It's an energy.
So you know that you fully trust yourself because of how the spirits are interacting with you, or is it just something that you
Um, just how they're interacting with me, and just honing and being a practitioner, you have to know, differentiate your voice and their voice. So I stand true in my voice, and even when I'm kind of like aspecting myself, when I'm using different parts of myself, like the artistry part of me, the spiritual practitioner part of me, or the fashion part of me, I know myself to know which one I'm using at that time. It's almost like you are the oversoul of many aspects of yourself. So I definitely trust myself in that way of training my brain and training my consciousness and my spirit, all that intertwined. But then I also know when something's not me, because even doing this work, you can go into possession where something can enter you, and you got to know if you're in the passenger seat or somebody's driving. And usually you should be the one driving. But if something comes into you and gains possession upon you, you have to be aware. So I'm definitely aware, because this is not a true spiritual practitioner knows this is not a game to go into.
So have you had one or a few experiences of the possession part? What does that feel like when you first had it? What was
Kind of like going into the sunken place, like I said, taking a back seat, and that person may come through, even if they're, even if you're scribing and channeling, they could come through in your hand. Sometimes if I'm painting, they start, moving with me, and I know that it's not all me moving.
what is that?
Or my handwriting changes up, but it's a feeling where you know that you're not fully the function.
Does it feel like something, like there's something stand out of happening, like this is not me? That would
Sometimes you hear their voice and they'll start talking, and when they're talking, it's not how I talk. So it'll come a certain way. Or if I'm writing, scribing, my hands will start writing in a different handwriting, or just a different feeling. It's a vibration or feeling, but usually it hits your stomach, and then it can sometimes, when you feel them, it goes up your spine, and right here I could feel it, or through my ears.
Have you ever had a possession that wasn't dark, but it still wasn't you?
Yeah.
What is that?
That's when people that's like when when I do my readings, when somebody comes through, it may be their ancestor coming through or talking. So there's times where, when somebody just passed or anything like that, they'll come in. It's not necessarily dark.
What is your response to people who don't believe that people can talk to you or that you can have people from the past work through you? Do you have a response for it at all, or?
I think it's just what resonates with them. They stay in that because it's not for them, because they never experienced it. So you can't force them to believe it. It's just something where you know what you know. So it's no point of really explaining to anybody. Yes, you gotta understand, because 9 times out of 10 people go through possession every day and don't know it. It's just that I'm aware of it, but I can't try to force you to be aware of it. I won't force you to do it.
Have you ever had any backlash for your way of living through the spirituality and the readings and tapping into things that's not how you were raised?
I think in a sense,
Like
I
that.
was raised that way from my mother, not my grandmother, but my mother never told me, don't talk like that, don't say you see spirits, don't. That was just regular talk in my family about spirits, good and bad, throughout my family. There was just stories of the good and bad, and how to deal with it, and my mother never shied away with that, asking me, about dreams and all that. So it was always there. It's just that my grandmother came in a time with the religion, but my mother wasn't like that, and my father wasn't either.
Yeah, so no backlash that impacted you or affected you even after.
I got more backlash being in the Israelite church than being spiritual. I don't know. It's like people always, even friends from high school, was like, I always knew you could see you were able to do those things. So I never really received backlash for that. And now it's so trendy and mainstream. It's like I'm a big mama in this. I've been in it for so long. Like, I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't so far. I mean, people get scared. The Israelite church got scared and labeled me a witch, but that's the only thing would be them.
What do you mean they got scared and labeled you a witch? Did you show them something or say something to them and they responded?
I think it was coming from my sisters and other people that may have talked that now see what I do. They label as being a witch, and I just went to a funeral tried to go to a funeral for a friend who just died, and I was not allowed in, and I was called the Antichrist. So, you get labeled that, and they come up with definitely stories to say that you are that because of what I did.
It's okay. What is the Antichrist? I don't remember. What makes you the Antichrist? Do you know?
Because I left the church and I spoke against Tazadaki more so. Because everything else, no, I wouldn't say I'm the Antichrist.
Which is interesting, right? Because leaving the church or even, seeing your story about your experience with Tazadaki is way different than being against Christ.
Right.
Do you believe in Christ?
Of course.
So you wouldn't be against Christ, which is I don't know. We use in a lot of different religions, and I let people be who they are. I think I'm learning more and more each day. This is why I love the format of One Stories, because it's like God is working throughout all of this, and every story is like for them, like there's really a belief system and things that actually make sense to one world versus the other. Like your gifts and your spirituality and just your practices, it works in your world.
Yeah.
See things, but there are people who won't be able to see it, but it doesn't necessarily take it away from you, because when I read the Bible, there's different gifts, and everyone doesn't have the same gifts. So to recognize how are those used, if you use it, based on something that can be helping, and I use the word good and bad very loosely, but is it helping the world? Is it helping you? Or does it feel like it's destroying? And that's from it would come in. But how did it feel to leave the Israelite church? Did you feel relieved, or did you feel like an emotion that was sad because of the people in there? Like, what was that feeling like?
I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave the sisterhood I formed. That was a strong bond. I grew up with sisters, and then I got a whole circle of sisters after, really going through a lot of hardship in the church, of people not even liking me at first because I came in along to making bonds and friendships that, are still foundational to my sisters that are still in the church. So, I started Star Ruby, which was, major for the Israelite women. And it was something that was formed with me and a group of strong women. And that was the sad part. But leaving the structure, I had already been put out of the church for a year and a half, and they came back. So it was like when I got put out, I knew I could do it on my own. If I wanted to read scriptures, if I wanted to even have my own classes, I could do that. Like I was teaching my children. I was teaching my sons like a little Sabbath school with them, fully capable. So I knew I was fully capable of all of that without the church. So one day I was sitting in the basement and they were just going on. And stuff hit me. Yeah, they were having their sermon, and I was trying to follow along and I couldn't follow along. And I heard my higher self say, if this is how you had to get to heaven, I'd rather take my chances in hell. And I just got up. I told my sons, come on. And the one guy on NIS, he was just like, you gone? And I said, yeah, I'm gone. But when he looked me in my eyes, he knew I was gone. And as I was leaving out, the girl that was like always nasty to me, she was like, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I told her, and you won't be seeing me again. And she just looked stupid, like, and I just went on, and I never looked back. I never looked back. I called all the women that I loved in the church and was like, you had that talk. Well, y'all, I see things that y'all see. Hopefully y'all see it. And y'all follow me, and I'll be there on that other side. But I can't do this no more. I can't live like this. I can't live this lie. It's not for me. It's just, I couldn't. It was too depressing. It was too hurtful.
What's so crazy about you saying that? We probably talked about this church, hours and hours of content of talking about this church. Probably heard our stories in and out, but I never knew that that's what happened to you, because that's what happened to me when I was in church one day. We were doing we were like doing the prayers in there, and one of the men, I don't even remember everything. And then he says, that we would be doing this like forever in the kingdom, and that's what we were living for. For some reason, it's like that stood out to me. He was like, I don't think. Oh no, he said that. But before he said that, I can't remember exactly, but this is what I felt from it. What I felt from it was, we could never, ever please God. That we will always be wrong. We will always be dirty in his eyes. And there is no way out of that. And then on top of that, because we would never please him, the next line was that, we were going to be praising God forever and ever. And that's what we would be doing in heaven. And I was just thinking, like, this is too much.
Yeah, there's a prayer that definitely goes right with that. And I remember it. I remember that prayer. And it's the thing was, we say, holy, holy, holy. And yeah, they said we was gonna be doing that. I'm like all day and night. That's angel. And I was like, that's angel work. That ain't my work. Like I'm gonna be chilling. I want see, God, Jesus Christ is my homie. And I remember even saying that, like, I want to know Christ, and we be cool like that. Like that's my homie. But they was like, wow, that like it was so, and that's why I say it was so to the letter of the law. Like I got that strict Baptist, but not strict, and then I got the letter of the law, and that was what obviously my spirit wanted for my foundation. And I still take stuff from Baptist and the Israelite church with me as my my moral code or conduct. But it was just something I had to evolve from.
Lots.
I was hurting myself and my purpose.
It was a lot of things that you would never get it right, but you keep trying. Like to me, that felt very tiresome and very like, well, why would I spend all my time here with y'all and not be worth it? Because everything that we did was so heavy and so strict, and it was so much like around it. It didn't even feel like right now. I feel liberated and free. I feel like I that whole worship and loving God constantly over and over again, that feels natural to me now. Like it feels like I want to, like it doesn't feel like heavy and loaded. But I had that I had that same process of hearing that, and combined with like, there's security in a church and just the restriction with your children and where they can sit, and we're in the basement. Like it's hot.
With one bathroom. Don't be pregnant and with one bathroom. You'll peeing in cups and everything. We got one bathroom. Like, come on now. You knew that was Mel ran. Like, why would y'all get us place with just one bathroom? It's disgusting.
You're waiting on a bathroom and you're trying to get your children to sit there quietly. And it was just like, all of this is too much. And I remember like getting up that day and then going to the park near the church and walking around. And that's when I knew my decision was my decision before, actually, uncovered. But like, I think it's just that feeling of the heaviness of the law when I speak, to someone, other people have come out the church. It was just too much. And I think that, because when I think about God, when I came to the Israelite church, there's the understanding that like God is in all this nice Goldilocks, like, well, Goldilocks now, nice and happy. There's this other versions. I'm like, okay, so I'm introduced to these other versions, but I was like, I mean, but can we not remember that there is a light part and loving part of God and caring and forgiving? Like, do we have to stay?
I seen that in the sisterhood. That was the light part, was to find the sisterhood, to know that somebody will always be there for you as you're going through your shit. That was the light part for me. And the high holy days, I think everybody was very in tune with each other on the high holy days. But I found my liberation leaving the church. I found it through sex. After leaving the church and then leaving the father of my children, I found it through sex, and that's when I became a white tigress. And that was very liberating, to be a white tigress. But, going through that stage, that was even also having to get that energy off of me, and my moral conduct coming back. Like, you got to do stuff and adjust the right way.
Let's rewind a little bit. When you found out about Jehovah's Witness from the boyfriend in was it high school or middle school?
It was middle. It was 8th grade going into 9th.
When did you start to learn about the Israelite church? How did you go? Or was there anything between Jehovah's Witness and the Israelite church? Or did you?
Well, I didn't become a Jehovah's Witness. He just sparked the thing for searching for the truth.
Okay.
So I was still in the Bible. I was still reading different books. And then I met the father of my children when I was like in 12th grade. So I started, the church got introduced to me through a flyer that he had. So I went on the flyer and I went on their website. They had a Philly site. I didn't know they had one in Baltimore until um, the father of my children found them at a street speaking. And then he finally took me to a high holy day, a Hanukkah party, and that was my beginning.
What was that like when you first went into the church? Did you completely resonate with it? Did you have questions? Were you curious?
I was already being taught online by the Philly church and listened to a radio show. And then I was already familiar with what they were doing. But my first time going, I didn't like how they were speaking out of the Bible. It felt very harsh. It felt very mean. And I was like, I don't know. Philly felt a little different than a Baltimore. The guys that on the Philly one, they kind of spoke a little soft.
Did anything stand out about when you first heard it from the Philly online version that made you feel like this is it? Or did you?
It was it because they could break down I felt like they could break down everything in the Bible. And that they didn't leave anything, no stone unturned. It seemed clear, like crystal clear. The scriptures, how they precept upon precept, it felt real. It felt like, yeah, this is it. Yeah. This is the truth. This is what I've been looking for. And they called it the truth. You know, that this was nothing like it. And I never heard anything of it. And I always had this militant way about me anyway. It was just ingrained in me to be very pro-Black, and this was just something that I needed, that I felt I needed to see in our people, that we could unify and be like that and be righteous.
Did you have maybe a breakdown that stood out to be something that you've never heard of before?
The 12 tribes, instantly. The 12 tribes breakdown was major for me. Because just seeing who was who, because we didn't know who we are. We're called Black, we're called African American, and they were telling us, no, you're more than that. You're more than a slave. This is your lineage, and these are your brothers and sisters. And that was major.
Was that breakdown that was powerful to you? Is it because just the understanding was revealed to you and there was a lack of understanding of yourself and where you were in the Bible? Or was there anything that made you?
Just culturally, that we had a bloodline, that we were special, and that I could identify with every scripture that they were saying, breaking down the 12 tribes. And it gave me purpose. It gave me identity where I felt like I didn't really have one. I didn't feel like Black people were respectful to themselves and were not respected to society.
How long were you in the church?
About 11 years.
What kept you there?
Family, the sisters, routine. My husband at the time wanting to make it work, wanting to have a good marriage, be righteous.
Before you had that moment when you said, I'm going to leave, you never come back to the lady that was mean to you, did you have a point within the 17 years where you started to break the love of the church and start?
11 years. It broke with the situation with my best friend and what happened to her. How they first it was like it was a build up. So when I got put out,
was this when you got put out? I mean, how many years had it been while you were in that church?
When I got put out of the church, I think that was around when my fourth son was born. So, that would be about 2006 or 7.
Have you been in the church at that point?
I've been in the church for about give or take 4 years or more, 4 or 5. I'm not for sure.
And that's when you got put out.
I got put out around 2006, and I was in it since about before 03, so about 2002 to, yeah, 4 years, about 4
Was
or
that
5
the
years.
first thing that started to break the love, or?
Yeah, that broke the love because when I went into the council, they called me a Jezebel. They said I was trying to, you know, evoke the women to be rebellious. They called me. They gave me all these scriptures because I let them know I had abilities I could see, and I felt like I had went through a great deal with almost dying. I was on the brink of death, and I had a shown up spiritual experience of seeing some things. And I went, I was writing the Tazadakia letters, and I got brought in thinking that he could help me understand my abilities and why they were there. And I got chastised for it. I got in trouble for it. Like I was trying to make myself to be something that I was not. So when I got nailed to the cross and a group of men, more than 10 men in the room, including my husband at the time, that shit broke me. It broke my spirit.
Yeah.
So I thought that, I was being prideful. So while I was out, I read every humility. I read every humility scripture, and all these scriptures really condemning myself.
Mm.
So then when I came back, it was like people still were trying to say that I was this bad person because I got put out. So were some of the women that didn't treat me as nicely. And after I started seeing Tazadaki, his shit didn't stink. He act like his shit didn't stink, but here he is. He's reeking on the videos. He's a whoremonger and all this stuff, and the church was just like turning a blind eye to it. Then he shut down stuff, and we couldn't even elevate. It was like, how are we told to have all these children, and y'all really not helping us? So my eyes kept coming open, and then the last straw that broke the camel's back was when my best friend got put out. They put her out of the church, and they made her get home through a blizzard. Mm. And I said, ain't no way. When she was like, she was leaving, I was like, ain't no way I'm staying in this, knowing I had to stay on the phone with her to guide her. This was not when we just had a phone and we could just pull out the phone and know where we were going. I was on Google. I think I was on MapQuest looking and talking to her on the phone, like, turn right, walk this way. She didn't know how to get through New York. It's a blizzard. She's trying to make it to the bus.
Because she's going from New York to Baltimore.
Baltimore for counsel. And just the abuse. Like when you would say, backtrack, I'm going through abuse with the man that I'm having these children with, and then I go to counsel and y'all say to me, well, what did you do? It was just like the women just weren't heard. Why would I stay in a place where I can't be heard? And that's what gets me today with that church, is that even at the funeral, it was like, I'm trying to talk to my sister that's still in the church. Like, I said my truth about what happened to me. That's not being an antichrist. That's just pure facts of me telling my story, my book, my chapter. Your chapter may be different, but mine was horrible. Yeah. Majority of the time, it was horrible. I was depressed. Yeah. So, you can't be mad at me. I will speak my truth until the day I die. And if people don't like it, so be it. Because it's my shit. It's my story.
It's interesting that when you spoke earlier about, the sisterhood being a light in the church, and I would agree that was a really good foundation of just how I viewed sisterhood as well. And only reasons why I considered even going back is because the sisters that, gathered around and you had these great relationships. I mean, these are really, really good relationships built.
They were.
Trying to be great women, and that's one thing that I appreciated that experience, is that I haven't seen women like this.
I never had a sisterhood like that. Never again.
And the men, and it's like in the men, there were different sectors of the men for sure, but it was also nice to see the leadership and them who were, trying their best. Because when I think about the church, I think under a certain leadership, some of the fruits were a little rotten, but I also saw like so many good fruits in both some of the men and women that, I appreciated. And it was almost, if you could just take that mentality of like us trying to do our best and be sincerely good and just put that and spread that amongst the world instead of just putting it in this one box in this one church or organization and saying this is it, and then kicking everyone else and out and then making them feel bad and condemn them.
Exactly.
To your point of like wanting to go back to those scriptures and look for humility, it was like, it speaks to like you really did care, but the way that came down, it's just, I think the power of it all and the construct of it all, that's part of the reason why there's a fall and what could have been beauty out of just the concepts. I think you don't build, when I think about religion, I think about how it's built because we want to get some things in order in the system. And sometimes when everything is all over the place, it's like, well, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. But if we have like the rules in the system, then it kind of helps us all get in order. But eventually it's like, we understand. We get the order. Because
Exactly.
yeah. And you don't have to continue to be condemning in the way that you do. And I think that's the one thing that stands out about the church is that there was that love that I remember about the sisterhood. And then when I heard about what happened to you, and it's like, it's so contrary to all the scriptures I hear about loving your brother.
There was love even from the brothers. There are some men there that were like my big brothers, and just seeing them at the funeral, not wanting to even look my way. Like, there was a brother that when my son's leg was broken and we were cooped up in the house, they came and got us, and he carried my son up the steps and all of that. I was there. He was present like an uncle. And my sons had a lot of uncles. And if there were times where men would grab my sons up and pick them up, and that crazy, that love that you see with Jonathan Majors and Michael B. Jordan, I've seen that with some of the brothers, like hugging each other, being gentle with each other. There was times where that was, especially during Passover. Everybody was always in a really good mood, a loving mood. And I won't say it was all bad, but that feeling of still not being heard and having that presence, like the one time when we were all up on the balcony in an old church during the High Holy Day, and it was dangerous. And the children kept on running around, and every time they ran around, the balcony felt like the floor was shaking, like it was not sturdy, it wasn't stable. And I was like, we could all fall through this. And everybody was like, yeah. And we all acting like they upset. So I said, let's go say something. I get up, I'm thinking people behind me. I turn around, ain't nobody there. So I still talked to them. I get chewed out. The father of my children, my husband in the church, he had to go and talk to them after I told him what exactly happened. After I told him exactly what happened, he had to like tell them, hey, don't do it like that. If she feels like there's a hazard, y'all need to listen. Yeah. And then after that, they didn't have it at that church anymore. But it was just like, that's when I was like, we got to get Star Ruby together, because the men are planning these high holy days. They're planning these events, and they're not taking into account the women and children. I mean, the location and along with the first church that they had and the other church, there was always one bathroom. Yeah. Why are we doing this? It was like, you're not thinking about women and children and pregnant women who go to the bathroom on a regular, or the spaces that they would pick for the high holy days were just not suitable for us. It was just the man thinking of,
and I think that's part of what was missing, is that it was all like, it's like all the good pieces are somewhere around here, but like it just wasn't put together properly. Like if there was more acknowledgement of women and being a help, and that our gift is different than men, then that could have brought some light into the church. It felt really empowered. It just felt like men just being mad at women. To me, like, again, there was a lot of good stories, a lot of good experiences, a lot of good relationships. But that heaviness that came a lot from like men like being so overly strong in men that I don't want to take that away from them. But it's just like, where's the
Gallant.
balance? Where is your appreciation that we also are God's creation? That is not all bad that we're
They claimed that we were always arguing and gossiping and fighting, but I said the fighting really came from not being able to express yourself and be mad at your sister, and they would get involved in it and call you to counsel instead of letting women be women and hatch it out the way they needed to. It was like we were still controlled and treated like children, not grown women. So that was that fight for Star Ruby to say, hey, we can do this all together. We can be organized. We can get shit done. And y'all can trust in us to do something than just deal with the children. Star Ruby was basically like a group of women that they allowed me to get together to help for funds with the church and just think of ways to make money for the cathedral in New York. It started off that we wanted to kind of help and do some different things. So we came up with the group Star Ruby. And there's that scripture about, a woman, the righteous woman, the virtuous woman is worth more than rubies. And then I was like, okay, I started looking for a ruby. And then I found that the shield of David, that 6-pointed star is naturally in a star ruby, and it's one of the most expensive rubies that you could have. And I was like, it was our worth in that star ruby line. It was those women that I was dealing with. It was showing that we are worthy, we have worth. And I truly believe that was the seed of, after I left the elect ladies and Ecclesiastes, whatever that stuff is that they do now.
So there's a point where you leave the church and you said you tapped into that freedom with liberation and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started using more that got you back. Did you run into anything else before you became who you are now? Like any other practices?
I did. I mentioned him, but he became my teacher. And I found him on Facebook as I was being, in my white tiger straight up. A lot of men started coming in my inbox. But he stuck out to me because he kept on talking about Christ consciousness, and everything about Christ. And it was something, again, that intrigued me. And I met the father of my 2 younger ones. I have 9 children, but my younger 2 I had with him. And we ended up doing business together because after I left the church, I had this online group called You Only Love Magic. And it was more of helping women tap into the white tigress practice and also just spiritual practices. And I found myself almost like trying to mimic the church in a way with how I was structuring the women, because I had over like close to 2,000 women underneath me in different places. So it was like, oh, I got the power now. I can start doing this. And it showed that that Israelite shit never left me, how I was dealing. And then I attract this man. And he seems like a god in this godly form and knows a great deal. And I was learning from him, and it felt like I started becoming in a whole nother cult as years would go on. I ended up leaving Baltimore when he came because my family became alert and thinking that I was making a bad choice with being with him, but I still feel like all of that was divine. And me and him came together, but this was a man who was claiming he was Christ, that he was God, and I started to get caught up in that world, his realm. And I was in his realm for close to 4 years, and my children were in it. And I do have some regrets with him, but then I have a lot of that was that was divine and it was meant to happen, and I'm okay with that. But it was abusive and in different ways than the Israelite church, but in some ways
What
very
do you think
similar.
attracted you to him? Was it because I know that you mentioned that you started to have that moral compass? Did you have that structure again that you?
He had a structure about being righteous. Um, he wanted his woman to be, looked at as very much godly. And I already knew that way. I already knew how to be submissive and all that. But then there was still that white tigress energy in me, that rebellious energy in me as well. And we kind of started clashing as we got to the end because I was like, you are not who you say you are. And I was attracted to him because he seemed like very similar to the church and showing a different path. And it was a more of a metaphysical, righteous path without the Bible because he never read the Bible like that. I knew the Bible. So I was teaching him in a way. He was teaching me some things that I never experienced.
So you come out the cult, the actual Israelite cult, and then you get into something that's similar to a cult. I actually remember that time. I was like, I would love you for these sticks. Because that's so funny that you said that. I never actually heard that you said that you felt that was a cult, because I remember the group and it was like it was like this sense of like proud of you, like I was so happy for you. But I also recognized like I just recently got out the cult, so I could see the cult like stuff very similar, and it's like I'm not trying to.
Everything needed order. I felt like the women needed order, but power did go to my head. Power did go to my head at that time, and then I got to see almost like a view of what Tazadaki and the men were dealing with. That yes, order needs to happen, and I took some of that, and then just getting with him, I got put back in a place of not really having all that power, but being an understudy.
So how did that end? Like, how did you move from that experience onto where you are now?
Well, I think the biggest thing was finally my son started getting older and they started seeing we were arguing a great deal, but most of our stuff, even like in the church with my first husband, it was poverty. And then with him, still poverty, even worse than that, being homeless, living out in my car, going by faith. And it was an exercise, it was a trial, but then you start to get sick of that. Yeah. I had 2 more children while homeless and going through all of this.
How many children?
I have 9, and then I had 2 with him. So just the experience, I got tired. My spirit got tired. I didn't want to do it anymore. It just didn't feel right. And he was just doing crazy stuff in the house when we were living in Charlotte, being very insecure and just doing abusive stuff. And I was like, this isn't Christ. It was another, like, nah, this isn't what I signed up for. This doesn't feel liberating. This doesn't feel free. I feel like I'm the understudy or the administrator or whatever. I'm not I felt like I was doing good stuff with him and learning with him, but just the other stuff that came with his personality and the behavior, it just wasn't gelling with me. And those red flags started coming up, like I could try to keep this family together and fall apart, or I could break up this family and gain myself. And in that, I chose myself and my children.
Having with yourself, was that the actual conversation you have with yourself to leave?
Hell yeah. I always keep a journal. This is my journal right here. I just got back to journaling, but I talk to those aspects of myself that comes out in those in the journaling, in the dear gods. Those aspected points come out to help me make the best decision. And that's how I know I trust myself. And I know what makes me happy and what makes me feel depressed. And I've never been afraid to end one life and come and renew another one. And if that means getting rid of the man, then so be it. I got, I really trust in myself that I can rebuild. Just losing everything from the church, I knew that I could jump off that cliff and fly.
Yeah. This journey of, you always had your spiritual abilities from birth. It's something that your mother and your father and your family nurtured. Going from your grandmother, your religious foundation, that law and that letter that you spoke of, and then getting that breakthrough of something new with research with your Jehovah's Witness and that boyfriend, and then having another man come in and show you a different perspective, kind of enhancing that first initial research and giving you the Israelite. Now, what do you think your primary goal was? Like, why do you think that you switched from these different experience and journey? Was it to find peace? Was it to just get answers? What do you think your spirit was trying to share with you, or what is your ultimate purpose here in life?
Find truth, find purpose. I wanted the truth. I wanted to know if what the Jehovah Witness was saying was a lie or not, and I wanted to understand can I live my life righteously. What is righteousness? What's my purpose? Because I have these abilities, what am I supposed to do with it? But none of those spaces, the Christianity, the Israelite church, never gave me an opportunity to tap in and be fully myself. So my journey, my spiritual journey, and going through all of that led me to being able to come back to what I did as a little girl and then some, and do my purpose. And my purpose is to help people. I'm a teacher. I'm a natural teacher. Do my work that I'm doing now as a spiritual practitioner and helping people understand themselves and their abilities. And that was deeply rooted in me. I always say I lived in many lifetimes, and I hope this is the last one.
Where do you find your peace, or what's your source of peace?
My peace is in nature. My peace is in just being me, fully me, because I don't know. If I can't be me, I'm depressed. If I can't teach, if I can't evolve, I can't learn or stay open and do my work, I'm depressed. So just fully being me and just loving nature, being in nature, and being in tune with myself.
In the beginning, when I asked you, who are you? You seemed like you was able to share that a little bit now. Very clear, but one more time. For those who are listening and would describe the Book of Hathor, segment L.
I think that this book has been going on for many lives, and I'm very present in this one. I do believe I've always been present, and I always will find that oversoul. And I'm an oversoul aspected in flesh, having a human experience. But this will be continued. This chapter continues on even when I leave this flesh. And I'm looking forward to that. I don't know. I feel like this is just a long beginning, not an end. It's never ending.
Well, thank you for sharing with me and sharing with me. I appreciate you, and I'm thankful to have you as a part of my life and a part of my journey and my story. And
that's awesome.
This off with you, because you have definitely been someone who's taught me different parts of myself. And just, just appreciating who I was from the very beginning, and then to, just become sisters over time. Even though we have different perspectives, we still are the same. And we just have different avenues, but I feel like we are in the same place. So I think about that with so many people. It seems like we're all different, and we are contrary to each other. But the more that we listen to each other, it's like we're saying the same thing, but
and it's just a different one. And that's your chapter. That's your book. Yeah, that's your story to tell that nobody can take away from you.
Well, this was fun. I'm glad. I'm going to stop the video now. I'm working on just not even having like much intros and outros, but I will put information in the description for those who resonate with your story and the way that you find your peace.
Okay.
Who have questions for you, you can leave them in the comments. This is the first video that I'll have on this new journey that I share with people, and no one better than you, because this is where this is important for me to have you, because it's like we had that common thread of the Israelite church, both very different paths in the Israelite church. I think I had a little bit of sunshine and flowers in there.
Yes, she did.
When I was around you, and I heard your story, and I see your perspective, and I've even learned some of the things that I experienced with you. I even take to this day, even how I hang up the phone. It came from guidance and your wisdom. Or
what do you mean by that?
You always when I was courting my husband at the time, I think I got off the phone like I got off the phone with my mom. Like, we just had this thing where, like, now we got better on the phone, but like it was just like you could just feel, how that feeling you could feel at the end of the conversation, but you didn't have to announce it. It was just like, and it was just it. Like, and it was no like goodbye. You like, that's how you get off the phone. I was just like, what? I mean, you don't know. I mean, what's done?
You gotta understand. We're going into some other stuff, but you were so young. That's what a virtuous woman was supposed to do. Is just guide the younger woman in ways that maybe her mother may have not taught her, just to help her. So it was just like you was little sister. I already seen his little sister, so it's just like it was all love.
I've always felt like I'm careful about like just being direct, like, I figured that out with you, like when I was younger and I had girlfriends, and they would say like, do you like this shirt? And I would say no, but that was my honest truth, right? But being able to deliver that in a way came expressing. I think you asked me about something that you were doing. I was giving you honest feedback, and you're like,
I remember that day.
And I was just like, and that's what made me understand that I can still speak true, but it can be packaged,
Like, you used to give it with no sugar, no nothing,
just think on the no dressing, nothing.
And I had to call you up, like, I didn't like that, man.
I like, in my perspective, I don't think I said anything mean. I think I just said it. Like, I didn't say it without.
It's a promo I was making, because I was always making my little promos and my signage, and we're going to college for all of that, and you was just like, you tore that shit apart, and I'm like, well, dang, right.
But I also have been a supporter, so it was always like, I see myself as like, I'm supporting you with this real thing, but it's not because I don't think, I don't, you know what I mean? But that helped me with sisterhood continuously, because like, the way that I deal with my friendships now is just like, I always have that experience in the back of my head. And, and I think about like, just, when you talked about being condemned earlier from the church, it's like, when we change our behavior to be better, it's more like on a relationships basis. Like, I appreciate relationships more because you have these conversations, and it's like somebody that you can be honest with. You're one of the few people in life where like, everything, but like, as far as being able to talk to you and know that I'm completely guard down and be able to say like whatever, like we had a relationship that was sincere, even with so many differences.
Right.
Like, I feel like the world should be that way, when you can be as different as you want to be, but find places to also correct one another without it being like, I'm correcting you.
Right.
Correct. By showing and expressing how you felt, and I should be able to receive that. By just seeing how you felt and realize like, I'm wrong, or how could I do that better? Like, if we start to just be in tune with one another, that that's all of our ministry. To love one. It's like, even down to the fact, when I think about your sisters and the sisters that we had in church, and how we're so separate from that, and when we had that death happen, it's like, we don't even know her anymore. Like, she was somebody who, because of the church mindset, wouldn't even talk to us anymore. But we, like, would you gather her? Like, it's just like that. What I'm saying is that religion and that box and what it does is separate in a true relationship where we do feel the presence of God and we really do want to meet. You know, the structure is important, that the rules are nice for helping our foundation, but we have to some point become that, you know.
Right. It has to be in your members, in your heart, in your mind. It has to already be, you know, signed and scribed inside of you. So you just live it. And really, it's so basic. He said, above all things, love thy neighbor. So when you love thy neighbor, and can't go wrong.
In the foundation example, this is why I came back to, like, you know, who was an example of being good? Like, where can we have that marker? And I love, you know, just the stories of Christ and the parables of Christ, because when you see how he dealt with people, it wasn't even based on like keeping these laws and stuff like that. It was like he still abided, you know, you could say it was important, but it was like, if you follow this one thing, all these things fall into place. Because if you think about it, if I'm truly loving you, I'm naturally not going to want to kill you. I'm naturally not going to want to offend you, or I'm naturally not going to want to take your wife or take your husband or
right. You will never do it.
Right. So all of those commandments start to fall in place. So the example is like, this is what Christ did. Like, okay, we're going to make mistakes. This is why I made a mistake. Like, you know, talking too harsh, not learning, you know, my speech has come a lot better. I'm very intentional with my words because of that, you know, but and that's also in the scriptures about a soft answer, turn away wrath, and like the words like that keeps a friend. And we're still friends to this day, sisters and friends, because we, you know, but it's because of the love being there first. And I feel
always
like we all did that amongst all these different spaces, and just learn and use the Bible as a reference, or use the Christ relationship as a reference, and not so much of like a division source. So like my stuff is
he got rid of that strictness of the law. We don't have to live to the letter anymore. You know. But you know, when those practices, like the Israelites, they try to follow the letter, and that makes you slip, and pride become a fall to you, because you don't even have to do that. And that's where slip ups like that funeral happens, where you Black people, and in a time that's really supposed to be love thy neighbor, and y'all come together to celebrate life, it was division. It was trying to shame somebody, or, you know, call somebody, label somebody something they're not, and they don't, you know, they're showing otherwise, and you can't recognize that. That's what you call a cult. That's when it becomes a cult. And that's a scary thing to be a part of. But I'm thankful that we both made it out of there, and we're here today to tell our stories, and you blossom into something, you know, I already knew from the beginning of seeing you. And I'm so glad that you did come out. And it shows that you wanted to evolve and just understand yourself.
That word cult, you know, I ran with it a lot, and I even thought about, you know, when I finally like solidify, like, this is what I'm going to do, this is where I'm going to be at with my relationship with God. Someone was like, you got to write that other part of the book, because that brought girl all caught up. But now it's like, if I say caught up in Christ, it almost feels religious, you know, but it's just in the behavior of Christ, you know, like,
what's just Christ coming?
You know, that's what I still don't. When we did the training or whatever, that's what she followed, the lady. But you know, whatever it is, I'm not putting names or labels on it. I need
just as you say it, Christ consciousness is to think like the Christ still are.
I just want to be hit. You know, today I'm reading love in deed, not in just in word, like in deed. Like if that's what I saw, if I see you loving in deed, you know, like charity amongst all these things, you know, like that to me is like, we can get here. These are simple things. You just have to work through. And that's why, you know, religious and these churches and things have its place. Not even just for those who have, you know, don't know, but just for those who to come back. It's a good spirit to be around people who are trying to be good, you know, whatever that means to people. But bye, everybody.
Yeah, we will go.